Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hey everybody, welcome to another amazing episode in the Shrimp Tank down here in Boca Raton, Florida, where street smarts and book smarts collide. I'm your host today, Jason Hill, with my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cox. He's the director at the FAU Adams Center for Entrepreneurship. If this is your first time tuning in, this is ran in collaboration with the FAU Adams Center. They have a lot of neat things going on each and every year. My co-host had to step out for a moment. He had to take an emergency call, so I'm going to jump right into things today. We've had 100+ episodes on the Shrimp Tank, and you catch them all on iTunes, iHeartRadio, or up on our website, the Boca Raton Shrimp Tank Podcast.com. And every week we come to you with these fireside chats. Ever since we've all been forced to really work from home, we made a decision to switch this over to some cool Zoom fireside chats. We get to collaborate with the best and brightest entrepreneurs in and around Boca Raton, Florida, as well as sometimes outside. Like today, we have John Gillie, who's headquartered up in New York and New Jersey, and we're happy to have him because he has a really neat business going on online. But to start things out, my co-host is back with me, Dr. Kevin Cox. Kevin, should we know anything going on at FAU right now? There's a lot of things, of course, being, decided right now. Is school coming back? Is it not? What's going on at FAU?
Yeah, so, things change day to day down here. You can see there's been a little bit of a spike in the numbers. I'm sure everybody's aware of that. So that leads everyone to be a bit more cautious. So we haven't made any decisions about the fall. It looks like most everything that can be online for the summer is online for the summer. And one of the things that we're doing over in the entrepreneurship area right now is we're preparing for our I-Corps program. I-Corps program is funded by the National Science Foundation, that's NSF, and it's a really cool opportunity for entrepreneurs, professors, faculty, researchers, and really anybody who's creating some type of innovative technology, right? So really deep tech. And the idea behind the National Science Foundation is to determine whether or not that technology, right, that's developed in large part via public funds, right? We're a public university, we do research and we take public funds and people invent really cool, awesome stuff. And the idea is, well, wouldn't it be great if consumers and citizens and people around the world could benefit from these innovations if they're indeed commercializable? Not everything is. That I-Corps program gives these faculty members and researchers some funds to investigate, hey, this thing that I created in the lab, pretty cool. Is it a business though? Is it commercializable? So we're taking applications now, and that program's set to start in July. It's going to be a great opportunity.
That's pretty unique. And what about students at FAU? Are they coming back in the fall? Have you guys made a decision yet?
No, that seems to change almost daily.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into things today. This is all about small businesses on this show. So I've been wearing this shirt for 11 episodes straight. The whole idea is, if you're going to spend some money, why not in your local community? These business owners need your support more than ever. When we look at what we're all spending money on, most of the time we could spend it, locally here. It does not always have to be online, to an Amazon.com type, or an Apple.com. You could spend a few more bucks, locally, and these business owners then are able to hire, additional employees and really boost up our local economy. So let's kick off with John Gillie. I got to start with John. John is one of the few people that saw my financial service business up in New York City. When I heard his idea and he heard my idea, I was like, John, I'm moving to Florida. And he couldn't believe it. He's like, you just built this whole financial service group in New York, me and 4 other partners. And he had this idea about TTT. And, this is the first time I've got the opportunity to jump back on a call with John. So John, tell us about TTT and where it is today.
Well, thanks, Jason. And I was bummed you left in New York because I used to, camp out in your conference room there. So that was pretty cool.
I know. We had 42nd in Lexington. I mean, that was one of the best locations an office could be, of course.
Yeah, the price was right for me. So thank you. Well, thanks for having me on. So as Jason alluded to, I had this kind of crazy idea about 4 years ago to build a online marketplace for used trucks, tractors, and trailers. And so it went from an idea to, do I really want to do this? I can't do it by myself. I'm not a coder. I'm not a tech, I'm a tech entrepreneur now, but 4 years ago I wasn't. So I had to reinvent myself. Went out into the market, built a business plan, raised some money, surrounded myself with people way more capable than me. And we built it and we're launched. So it's, trucktractortrailer.com.
Cool. We're going to get into more detail, but for now, Elisa, tell us a little bit about your entrepreneur background and what your main companies are right now.
Sure, yeah. I have been in the sports industry, specifically golf, since 2003 on my own. Working first started as, consulting a company called Executive Golf International, which I still do. But most recently in 2016, we launched something called Women's Golf Day. So it's a unique platform. And interestingly, I did not necessarily want to get into the events or think I was going to have a technology company, but in the end, I have a technology company, especially after COVID. So it's a 1-day, 4-hour experience for women and girls. And it's at over 900 locations in 52 countries, all on the exact same day. So the market, it started out as a passion project and the market spoke. So it's something we opposite of what you did, John, like where we came out with a business plan, raised capital, and then went out and executed. Instead, it kind of happened in reverse. It was a smaller project and it kind of blossomed. And so it's been an interesting path because then how are we figuring out the revenue streams? What exactly? But obviously there's an appetite for it. So where most people do something and they got to go drive the interest, we had the interest. Yeah. It's been interesting, and the COVID thing has been interesting. There's a lot of work, but we doubled down in this downtime. We changed our date and decided to, on our June date, have a technology. We called it Virtual Women's Golf Day, a digital celebration. So we went from 0 content to we had 48 videos from the top, like Jack Nicklaus or, all these different people. So it was crazily super opportunistic for us. We ended up, I think, with a whole elevated digital platform that I don't think would have happened, and certainly not that quick or for free, effectively, if we had just asked for it during a regular time period.
Yeah, I really enjoy how, you looked at this differently. You just didn't sit back and cancel your event. You said, hey, everyone's home. There's more people available, and you went virtual, and it came out to be a great event. That's pretty unique. Same thing here on the Shrimp Tank, of course. We could have just shut down and had no show, but then we came up with this idea, and look where we are. We're 11 shows in, and it's working out. I'm going to shift over to Michael because he's got a lot of background in sports as well. Michael, tell us about MLE Law, why it was created, and what you're doing right now.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm primarily a labor and employment attorney. I've been doing that for almost 20 years, mostly on the management defense side. And I spent 18 of those 20 years at mid-sized to large law firms, but I always had an entrepreneurial bent to built in my DNA. So I did some tech investing, and I always had different ideas. I started a podcast several years ago that's finally started to take off, that kind of covers the intersection between business and sports. And then as part of the law practice, I was starting to do some different things relative to social media and some stuff that maybe corporate, defense lawyers didn't normally do, that did not ultimately sit well with my prior law firm. They're having meetings about how to bring business in, and they're talking about, well, we need to go to bar association events and chamber events, and those are nice. But I was like, no, we need to be on Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter. So then ultimately some stuff happened that was out of my control. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and open MLE Law, which I kind of built as a firm that sort of uses modern technology as a way to provide sort of efficient, transparent, and price predictable representation. And as part of my labor and employment practice, obviously COVID has been a huge part of that. For me, it's been extremely busy. I don't say that as a good thing, it just sort of is. And there's always been a sports side to what I do. I've done some M&A work in the sports world, particularly the NBA, in a past life. So here I am.
Well, thanks. I love how you kind of changed the model. So often I go to networking events and I get the business card from the attorneys, and it's the same old style. So I'm really happy to hear that you're doing it in a different way. James, tell us about what you're up to.
So I'm in the pharmaceutical business, 37 years in. The first 17 years I worked for very large pharmaceutical companies, and I decided back in 2018 to bring my expertise to Florida. I was chairman of an organization called BioNJ, which represented the whole pharmaceutical industry in New Jersey, and sitting with Phil Murphy, who's the governor of New Jersey, and he's talking to me about his tax plan. And I decided, we'll take our employees that earn quite a bit of money and save them some money in taxes and move them. So AzurRx, which is a company I'm CEO of, it's my fourth startup. We're on NASDAQ. We trade on NASDAQ right now. But I'm also chairman of several other companies. So I've got two companies in Florida. One, I'm chairman of a company called Maritime, which is in Jupiter. And we do cardiac bypass surgical products as well. And AzurRx, we work in cystic fibrosis and gastroenterology related programs. The difference for myself, as probably to all your panelists here, is I don't really have any revenues. The way our companies work is I go out and raise a lot of money among the investor community. Most of my investors are actually in Palm Beach right now. And we go out and we do clinical development over a course of several years. We develop a very strong valuation for the company and we sell it. So right now our market cap is pretty low, but I've got some good things going on in this company. Where right now we have 12 employees. I'm looking at another acquisition, which will probably triple or quadruple our footprint in the Boca area. My first company, Tabir Therapeutics, we sold to Allergan for $1.7 billion. So that's the kind of multiples that we look for. Sometimes you hit them, sometimes you don't. My last one was a big miss. Completely screwed that one up, but it happens. So part of being a serial entrepreneur is you just keep coming back to the plate and doing it all over again. So this is my fourth try.
Can you convince John to move down here? You obviously saw the numbers with taxes and came on down. Can you tell John why he should move down here?
Well, I'll tell you, we were sitting at dinner in Lawrenceville with Governor Murphy, a bunch of us who, leaderships in the community, and Murphy, who calls me Little Jim because I'm vertically impaired. I'm only 5'7", and he's 6'5", and he calls me Little Jim, and he says, "You don't mind paying more taxes, do you?" And he started talking to us about his tax plan. Luckily, none of it passed. But while he's talking, I'm on my phone doing all the calculations on what things are going to cost me on my drive home. I called my financial advisor and I said, by Friday, this is a Tuesday, I said, by Friday, I want you in my house with a plan on what it's going to cost me to move and how much money I could save. By the following weekend, we were down here in Palm Beach County looking at real estate. And it took us 2 months and we were gone.
Yeah. And we're seeing those numbers increasing. I think the last time I read an article in New York Post, it was averaging about 100 people were leaving the New York tri-state area per day, and now it's close to 300. And when I talk to local realtors, they're not doing good selling property to locals, but all their new flow is coming from the tri-state area, and they are busier than ever, and it's propping up a lot of the real estate market down here. I'm going to have to, lean into Kevin for a second. Kevin, this is a really unique panel. I know a lot of things are going through your mind. What are your thoughts today with this group?
Yeah, that's a really, really diverse and very impressive panel.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of experience and expertise. I got to start with a question for Elisa, though. Golf seems like it might be having a little bit of kind of a renaissance. It's interesting. I oftentimes survey my students for one reason or another, how many of them play golf, and it's so few in this kind of generation coming up now, and golf's been a little bit kind of on a downturn recently. My sister actually works in the industry as well at the Golf Channel up in Orlando. But you get Tom Brady and Peyton Manning out there, and there's no other sports on TV, and it's seemingly one of the safer sports as far as we know in terms of being outdoors. Everyone can have their own cart. What do you see for golf in the future here?
Well, I think with regard to the coronavirus and what's going on, exactly what you said, they got creative and came up with some ideas. The guys can still play. The PGA Tour went back this past week, and they're playing without an audience. So, I mean, from a business perspective, they're obviously getting hit with, and I don't know how sponsors or whatever are getting in or out of their contracts, but obviously there's no hospitality tents, there's not spectators on, merchandise being sold, TV rights, that's also probably, I'm sure, a little challenged, but it is outside. So as opposed to like NBA or, even NFL where they're having so much contact, and I think the stadiums are a huge part of it there. At least they're still able to do it. And then it's a unique sport because it's not just something that you watch and it's got that professional aspect. It also has, people don't buy houses next to football stadiums. They buy them on golf courses. It's got a real estate component. It's got a huge, it generates more industry than the motion picture industry because there's so many people involved in running a golf course, everything from maintenance to staffing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it does have a big footprint. And with the coronavirus, people are able to go back, like you said, they're putting one per cart and it's limited, but it is outdoors. You cannot touch or be around people and still do it. I think people are so stir crazy that they're doing it. A lot of the governing bodies had spent some time in the last, I'd say 15 years, maybe 10 to 15, with really targeting juniors. So junior females, ironically, are the fastest growing segment in golf. And so you'll see that, you'll see now we're going to start seeing the fruits of their labors of actually putting some effort into trying to keep their industry alive effectively. But,
Nice, very interesting.
but I see all of it's going to get hit. I mean, everything's going to be so I think the real estate market, I'm not an expert in this, but I think everything is going to get hit in certain ways. I think some will have it a little easier than others, industries, but and it's forced us to get creative. But I think I'm sure everybody here is an entrepreneur. You see it, and for me, this was super interesting to watch unfold with everything from big companies to small companies. How do you approach this challenging time? And it's different than just a recession. So do you fold up, furlough people, take a break, and say, we'll see this in 2-3 months? Or do you double down and either advertise, market, think of something creative to do, and try to find opportunity in crisis?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I can even see it, in my undergraduate entrepreneurship class this summer, some of the business ideas, because they're all working on real business ideas. We had some of the best and most creative ideas come up this summer, and most were in some way related to this massive external shock of COVID, in one way or another, whether it's renting UV lights to businesses or home fitness equipment that they've designed on their own. It's very interesting. Whereas in a typical semester without such a massive external shock and change, they oftentimes struggle to come up with sort of any ideas.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm impressed by people that, get creative.
For sure.
So John, I have a question for you, talking about being creative and doubling down right now. I mean, every advertisement that goes through my phone right now is, these car ads, right? You see the commercials, they are spending a fortune. And, you're in that niche industry on the trucks and tractor trailer side. So how are you taking COVID right now? Are you doubling down?
Well, I think we've had a bit of a reach out. We've had a bit of a pop. We're still, I think James said, pre-revenue or his companies. We are just now going to market. It took, 3 years to build it, right? TTT. And it's ironic, but I don't know if the word ironic is the correct word, but the timing could not have been better for TTT, right? With COVID. There's been this big demand and push into the cloud. I think you're referring to Carvana and Vroom, and there's a couple other niche sites popping up like Shift. They're going IPO. Vroom was up 118% last week, and which is really great for me because I'm still fundraising and the phone rings and people are interested, right? But there's also a measured pace to that. You have to be very responsible, and you can't. You have to be adaptive to what's happening, but you can't, get off your track too much because for everybody here on the panel that has started up a business, you got to be true to your focus. I agree with Elisa on the revenue stream. You got to be adaptive and kind of figure it out on the way, and take what the market gives you, but at the same time be very, very focused on driving to your end goal and your desire.
Yes. James, you talked earlier about raising funds. Are you seeing it a lot more difficult right now, to raise funds? Tell us a little bit on that end.
Well, ironically, the pandemic has been a double-edged sword for us, and we've gotten very lucky as opposed to most businesses. So, number one, I want to shout out to all my fellow business people who are suffering. I feel really bad because for us, it's actually been a boondoggle. As you know, politically, the pharmaceutical industry keeps getting slammed. With Bernie Sanders and Amy Klobuchar and everybody who's against us. No one really understood. No one really understands what we do. And now with the pandemic, people are looking to us for answers. I'm actually on a COVID task force. I'm a virology guy. That's what I do. And we're going to find answers that are going to save the world. I mean, that's what we do. Our feeling is we buy time, we buy life for people, and that's what we do. And it's expensive. It's not cheap to bring these medicines to market. So the money is starting to flow. It's amazing where in the last, I would say 2018 to 2019, lots of the money politically started shifting towards IT, towards energy, wind energy, things of that sort, and moving away because our stock, was so low and no one wanted to invest in the pharmaceutical industry. Now it's come full circle. You could have a product that sneezes COVID and everyone's going to throw money at you, even though the product may not work. So it's been amazing. So the downside to it is that our clinical trials, because we do clinical trials all over the world, Italy, Spain, United States have stopped. Very, very much the clinics have stopped. They're closed, so we can't get patients in. So our timelines have elongated. And due to the attention that the FDA is giving COVID, they're not really giving us a lot of attention. So our timelines, I thought the investors would be running for the hills, but they're not. They're sticking to it, understanding full well that the FDA is preoccupied right now.
What about raising money in South Florida? It's a consistent topic that comes up on the show. It's consistent coming up at FE Tech Runway. And we have a lot of startups down here in this area, but it seems like folks in your shoes come down here and a lot of wealth is down here, but the wealth still kind of invests in companies on, the East Coast, more commonly. So how's it been down in this environment when it comes to raising money?
It's a great question. I think things are changing big time. South Florida has notoriously been known as a medical device area and a generic company area, which is doesn't entice big investors. The margins in generics are very tight. Medical devices, the margins are very tight. They like pharmaceuticals. So a lot of the industry has really been based in Boston, San Francisco, San Diego, New Jersey, New York. What's happening now, because there are not a lot of venture capital companies based in Florida, most of them are in Boston and San Francisco. So the big money's still up there, but you're seeing these massive family offices opening up down in South Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, Jason, in the investment community, a lot of banks are moving down here and they're moving their venture arms down here as well. So you're starting to see a lot of mezzanine capital flowing in. A lot of the family offices are realizing they've got as much capital as the venture capital folks. They're not quite angel investors, but they're hiring some pretty good bankers to come in and help them move their money. So there's a lot of capital down here, especially in Palm Beach.
Sure. Kevin, you got to jump in on this one because you're always talking about it.
Yeah, I see the same thing. I see the same thing pretty consistently. I think the landscape continues to evolve in terms of resources, capital resources, and the organization or sophistication. It's getting better. Family offices still don't necessarily have their doors open so much as like you can just come and apply. You really need to network and go to the events. The Florida Venture Forum is great. That's a great organization. They have two events each year, which are great opportunities. But I keep hearing the same thing. Most people across different industries, I'll add on top of what James said, expected sort of all the funding to dry up. And that just really hasn't been the case across the board almost, which has been surprising to entrepreneurs and people raising money and the like. But as Elisa said, there's a lot of opportunities right now, as well as, a lot of challenges. And with some of those challenges in mind, let's jump over to Michael. I know a lot of employers, you mentioned representing employers and managers at mid-level companies in terms of litigation. I know they want to get back to work. They want to get their employees back to work, but they're nervous. They wonder about liabilities. There's so much to consider. What kind of advice do you have for the business owners and the entrepreneurs who watch this?
That's a great question, broad, but there's certainly a lot to cover when it comes to COVID. I mean, I think the first big thing when you're dealing with the new world that we're in is that you had some new employment law legislation that, strangely enough, applied to employers of 500 employees or less. And that's odd for employment law. Normally, it's the bigger you are, the more laws that cover you. And that was the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, which came before the CARES Act, before the PPP. And that is the first time in this country's history that we've had federally mandated paid sick leave, whether it's from a provision called the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act or some amendments to the Family Medical Leave Act. And so the first thing I always tell employers is you want to make sure you're on the right side of both of these laws because they're in effect until the end of the year. And so employers who are still in business need to understand that, whether you think COVID is still going, whether you think it's coming back stronger, doesn't really matter from a legal perspective. Those laws are in place. So the first piece of advice for employers and entrepreneurs, if you have staff, is, make sure you're on the right side of these laws. There's some notice requirements from the Department of Labor. The second sort of component to all this is if you participated in the CARES Act, you have a PPP loan, it's tremendously important that you're making sure that you're putting that capital to work in the right way. I think probably 90% of my day now is fielding calls from clients about, what do I do with my PPP money? Can I use it for this expense, for that expense? And they're really good questions. It's not like my clients calling me and saying, hey, I want to give my staff Rolexes. Can I do that? Obviously,
Yes.
You can't.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, sure. Go for it. So I think that's important. If you received any kind of federal money, make sure you're deploying it correctly. And then third is make sure you're staying up to date with all of your local and state regulations or orders that are coming down relative to COVID and what's happening, because it's changing by the minute, it feels like. And that, I guess, applies to the PPP as well. The SBA's issued new regulations almost daily. So I think it's tremendously important that businesses, especially hospitality, are keeping up to speed with everything that's happening. And it can sound overwhelming, but it's important if they want to continue to be in business. And then fourth and finally, and this is coming from the Department of Labor, not me necessarily, but I agree with it, is you really have to be over communicating with your employees, more so than ever. Culture is going to matter more than anything right now. Culture is going to be king. And it's important to talk to employees about what they're feeling, what their problems are, so you can kind of understand where they're at, and to sniff out legal issues. Somebody doesn't want to come to work because they're afraid of COVID. That's one thing. Somebody doesn't want to come to work because they have an underlying condition that makes them either unusually susceptible to COVID or that COVID could exacerbate. Now we've got ADA issues, and how you treat those are going to be very different, and the exposure is very different. So it's important to have those conversations.
And what about on the sports end? You run a podcast. Tell us behind the scenes. A lot of us don't get to speak with a lot of these, sport athletes, and they're all coming on your podcast. What are they, like right now? They're not able to do a lot of film shoots. They're not able to do a lot of sponsorships. Tell us what's happening behind the scenes with that group.
Yeah, so I actually I'm doing an interview on Thursday with someone who's got a pretty large following and is pretty popular in his designated sport. And we agreed to do the show in person, socially distanced. And he's the first person that I've interviewed that's agreed to do it in person. I recently had Florida House Representative Chip LaMarca on the other day. He did it by Zoom. We were talking about the new law, the name, likeness, image law in Florida that allows collegiate athletes to profit. So I think the general feeling I'm getting from people is still sort of the same, I think, with everybody, right? Uncertainty, a lot of questions. And in general, in the sports landscape, I'm doing a lot of commenting. In fact, I'm talking to Newsweek tomorrow on what's happening with leagues trying to get back to playing. Most notably is Major League Baseball, which is in my view, a complete disaster, and not a good one for a league that sort of has slipped from number 1 to 4 or 3, depending upon what you think. So you have a lot of issues between players and management. So you've got labor law, right, being mixed in there. Distrust on both sides of those two groups. And so I think, look, what we're seeing, the NFL seems to, again, be reigning supreme with a solid plan to come back. You're not hearing about a lot of labor strife there. You're hearing a little bit less in the NBA. I think Kyrie Irving maybe made some issues, but for the most part, it looks like they have a plan. But what I'm seeing is Major League Baseball kind of a mess. Everybody else sort of proceeding a little bit more deliberately. And in terms of the athletes, a lot of uncertainty. So I'm excited for Thursday when I get to sit down with somebody in person.
Sure. So we're going to switch things up. We're going to go ahead and have you guys ask each other questions. So I want to start with John. John, do you have a question for someone on the show today?
Well, I'm a connector, right? So I'm thinking I can go to James for fundraising advice and also relocating the business to Florida. Jason, I know I can count on you for a free office. Lisa's going to help me organize the trucktractortrailer.com golf tournament, right? Kevin's going to help me source some talent, and we can have a great project for your master thesis. And Michael, of course, could be help us out with growth and all kinds of fun stuff with our employees. So I think this is a home run for me today, Jason. Thank you.
You're welcome. So who do you got a question for?
So Lisa, I know I dove into your background a little bit. What is your favorite golf course in the world, and why?
Wow, it's a hard kind of question. Probably something like a Pebble Beach, or I had a client for a long time, Waterville Golf Links in Ireland, super beautiful. I tend to like courses that are along the water, but also, links courses or things that are unique. Anything with history, those are always cool. I mean, it's a unique sport that you can go anywhere in the world. Like when I said we have 52 countries, I mean, we've got courses and women in Uganda and Nigeria, and so it's not what you think of when you think of golf.
Right.
But I have a question for you.
Sure.
So just out of curiosity, the trucks that you have, is it like, do you own them or you're leasing them?
No.
Do you have a fleet?
So think of us like StubHub, right?
Okay.
We are a marketplace for, we like to think of ourselves as a vertical network, which is a combination of a social network and a marketplace, a two-sided marketplace.
Okay.
Which makes
Yeah, no, okay, I get it. So one of the things I was wondering is like when this whole COVID thing was going on and you had a number of, it was like interesting supply and demand. You had these farmers that couldn't sell the fruits and vegetables and things like that. And yet you've got food pantry places that they're trying to feed people.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, why doesn't a U-Haul or, and the farmers are just like throwing this away because there's nobody buying it and they're not going to spend extra money to pick it up. So why wouldn't like a trucking company or somebody jump on that and be like, hey, we'll at a fee do it and kind of connect those two dots?
I don't have the answer to that. My first thought is that the problem probably was not with the transporters, the fleets or carriers. It was in who are they going to deliver it to, the storage of it, or the retail, because that was all being disrupted. The malls were all closed, right?
Yeah.
And then some of your grocery stores that would typically take the fruits, vegetables, nuts, berries, and produce and ag were not necessarily open, so disrupted, right? So
Right.
I don't think I will tell you, because I'm in daily contact with the industry, fleets, carriers, owner operators, small fleets, big, small, they're hungry for business. That community went above and beyond the call of duty to try to make those deliveries. So I don't think the issue is there, but that's a very good question.
No, I just felt like there was an opportunity there for somebody who could seize it.
Oh yeah.
I'm not saying it's their responsibility, and I get why they're not getting delivered and they're not going to go out of their way to do it. But it seemed like somebody would go in there and connect the guy that's got the supply and the demand that's needed, especially in major cities. And if you're a trucking company, you could be somebody with some tech savvy people that could maybe make that happen.
I'm with you. And I will tell you that if there was any opportunity that was available, people went after it.
Okay.
It was really neat. It's still neat to see the industry responding to the demand or the problem in the market and rising above it. Great question, though. Yeah.
Michael, you have a question for someone?
Sure. I'll go with Elisa also. Golf related, of course. So we saw the Brady Manning Woods Mickelson sort of, I don't know what you call it, tournament, for lack of a better word. My question is, what kind of pop did the industry overall get from that, if any at all? I saw a lot of reports in the media, but I'm curious if you felt anything or heard anything or saw anything. Did that sort of bring you guys back a little bit? Was it meaningless? Anything?
Well, it was for charity, so obviously it was feel good, and it did raise money, and I think they were smart about it because they had, what's his name? Why is he escaping me? Charles Barkley, I think, commentating, and they had a woman, and so they were like clever about like, hey, let's get a bunch of touch points and what have you. I think it's just, entertainment. People are crawling the walls.
Yeah.
You can't really go. I mean, listen, I'm a huge Tom Brady fan, so I'm originally from the Boston area. So, but I would have loved to have seen that 10 years ago, when the real rivalry between Mickelson and Woods was happening, and and Manning is still actively playing football. I mean, Tom Brady, and I wrote a book where I interviewed 54 of the top athletes in the world that play golf. And I'll tell you, one is in your backyard is Ray Allen, which I have a huge amount of respect for, because the guy was winning championships and a scratch golfer. A lot of these guys, when you retire, of course, it's in your DNA. You don't just like curl up. You either do drugs or you play golf, seems like. What do you do with yourself? You're bred like a racehorse. You don't just go retire. Your body gives out, but your mind, that competitive adrenaline rush, doesn't go away. So that's why I think they get into golf, and some with betting or what have you. And that was the interesting part, like to see people that are at the top of their game in one sport and able to maintain, because anything, as we all know, that you do, no matter what, it's just muscle memory. You got to do it, whether you're an avid reader, to a chess player, to an MBA or golfer.
What part of Boston are you from?
I was born in Arlington, Mass.
All right. I grew up in Rhode Island. So New England.
Oh yeah, I lived there. We lived there too. I was growing up, Cranston.
Yeah.
Do you do, okay, I was like, I'll just be off with, do you guys do licensing and things like that? Law, licensing?
Sure. I've done some of it. Absolutely.
We'll talk after.
All right.
James, you're quiet over there. You have a question for somebody?
Well, I've got a couple of questions, but I'm going to bring up a controversial question. This question's from Michael to get a legal opinion. So I'm kind of a sports fanatic too. I lived in New England. I used to have season tickets for the Patriots.
Okay.
But the question is, I'm a big soccer fan, and if you watch the Premier League, they've actually got their act together with Black Lives Matter. They really do. They're doing it the right way. What's preventing the major sports organizations in this country from getting it right, which is getting the message right, moving away from the national anthem? For those of you who don't know, in the Premier League, before the kickoff, everybody gets on a knee. They all have Black Lives Matter on the back of their jerseys. They have a moment of silence, and then they start the game. And it's got a huge impact. Why can't the major leagues in this country get their act together?
Great question. Loaded a little bit because you sort of tinged it with move away from the national anthem. So I'm going to reshape the question and just say, look, in terms of like what can the leagues do to sort of be unified in the context of Black Lives Matter? One of the issues you always are going to have is the union versus management. So collective bargaining is always going to come into play. You're going to have ownership that wants to do X and players that want to do Y. Now, Recently, though, the NFL, I think, has dramatically changed. I think you're going to see a lot of unity. You may very well see entire teams kneeling. I mean, Roger Goodell's, video that was on Instagram and Twitter, it seemed to give the message that there's not going to be a lot of controversy, at least within the league, relative to kneeling. So I think the NFL is on a path, a pretty dramatic path, to sort of one direction, which is we're not going to make an issue of the kneeling anymore. There's not going to be ownership threatening to punish players. Now, how that gets shaped by other people in this country who may want to continue to resurrect that issue, that's a different story. But I think the NFL has sort of said, look, we're just not going to fight over that anymore. The NBA, I believe, actually has it in their collective bargaining agreement that the players are just going to stand. So I don't think that that's an issue. Now, Major League Baseball, they can't even get on the field. So they have a whole different story. But I think the shorter answer to your question is you're always going to have an issue when you've got unions and, bargaining agreements and what players want to do versus what management may want to do. And that's, I think, what's going to prevent sometimes things from happening in a more unified manner. I don't know if that answers the question.
Sure.
The best
Hey,
thing.
James, aren't you like, I'm beyond blown away and impressed by NASCAR. Banning
I thought it was
I mean, that's like a
amazing.
really serious, if anybody gets an award for really stepping out of their box and going against what they know is a lot of their core
Their base.
consumers, I was like, wow, bravo to you for really taking a stance.
Yeah,
And
getting rid of the Confederate flags, and that was amazing.
And I think that was key for NASCAR because they've been suffering over the last, I'd say, 5 to 8 years from a market share standpoint. I mean, there was a time when NASCAR was king of the world, and then it just started fading fast. Whether I don't know what you attribute that to, maybe I think marketing mostly, but they were able to get out in front. I thought it was a brilliant move on their part, and definitely I think resurrected the sport, at least in terms of getting attention, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone have a question for Dr. Kevin Cox? He lives and breathes entrepreneurship at FAU Tech Runway, as well as FAU Adams Center, and he's around so many entrepreneurs all the time. So someone asked Kevin a question. Go ahead, James.
I do. That was actually my second question. So I just find FAU, I'm learning, right? I joined BioFlorida and I'm learning.
Okay.
It's just such a competitive landscape in South Florida between FAU and Scripps Institute and Max Planck, and you're not sure, who's doing what. But I find that FAU has a great translational medicine platform, but what they're missing is like the middle management platform that can help bridge the funders and the science. So, and then you got up north, you got University of Florida that, just does not have its act together. They've got a gazillion assets, and FAU seems to be like the little engine that could. Great ideas, but they don't quite have the strategic plan put in place. So where's the university heading into to kind of congeal everything together?
So I think the university is heading in all sorts of good places, not just because I'm there and because it's in the backyard of where I grew up. I systematically targeted trying to land there. I think all the arrows are pointing up, and I can tell you that for a long time, I can tell you, but how should I put it? For a long time, well, they're not here anymore. No, but the office, there were a lot of challenges in terms of the Office of Technology Transfer, right? And some disincentives for some entrepreneurs and some researchers. And as you've got a great handle on it, everything wasn't aligned, as you kind of alluded to. It's like, oh, this is great, but then how do we get this to fit with this? And it was just all the pieces were there, some more organized and some more effective than others. But I think in terms of having the new president and the implementation of a strategic plan consisting of the pillars and the platforms, where it's the pillars are those things where FAU is really going to try to be the best in a few areas. And to some extent, they've already begun accomplishing that. And then the platforms are those things that really permeate throughout the campus, and entrepreneurship is one of those. And it's already showing some benefits. This year, the Princeton Review ranked our undergraduate program in the top 50, but there's a lot of synergy as you mentioned, with the private sector and the local ecosystem, right? So we kind of want all those things to work together. You mentioned the funding side, and that piece, our new venture accelerator, which is referred to as the Tech Runway. It's a 25,000 square foot accelerator just right next to the private airport. So it's easy for, once those entrepreneurs to sell their company to get, back right off and on their G5, no problem. Most of them are students right now, but, or local entrepreneurs. But as part of that, Reese Williams, the director, we had him on last week. If anybody wants to take a look at that episode, he founded the Tech Runway Investor Network, which is an angel group that's to be associated with FAU. And I think that's going to really help bring funding more clear into the picture. That is his background. He's also the founder and president of an angel group where I think he was for 19 years, called the New World Angels. So he has that expertise and that background, and we hope to leverage that to make sure we can align follow-on funding where it really fits. The saddest thing I see is when there's a great company, a great concept, a great technology, a great treatment, a great medicine, whatever it is, and it may die on the vine just because it doesn't get the funding. That's really sad, and hopefully as the ecosystem evolves, we can avoid outcomes like that altogether in the future.
Mhm. Thank you.
That's all I got.
Anyone else? Anyone else have a question for Kevin? Let's put him on the spot today. I like this.
Here we go.
Are they going to play football this season?
Oh, that's so far above my pay grade. I think they'll try, although as you're probably aware, the lane train has already left the station. So who knows what'll happen.
Yeah.
Michael, I got a question for you. Running a podcast, how has it helped in your business? A lot of attorneys won't touch it, right? You can say something and boom, you're in a lawsuit yourself. It's a compliance, issue, of course, with a lot of big firms. They won't allow it. So tell us about how a podcast has helped you.
It's been tremendous. I run it, Jason, you and I talked about this offline the other day. I sort of run it as just an arm of my law firm, sort of a marketing arm. My podcast has nothing to do with law. I cover the intersection between business and sports. It's a national show. I'm the only person running the show. And yeah, it's been great because it gives potential clients something that they can really have that's tangible, as opposed to that one little meeting we might have, or it's different than a business card, right? They can just pull it up on Spotify or iHeart or Apple Podcasts, and they can hear me, they can see me interacting with some great people that I've been so fortunate enough to meet. And it's a differentiator. And most people, when I meet them, to the extent I'm at some sort of traditional networking event, they could care less about law. They don't care. Oh, you're on a podcast. Now look, we talked about this, Jason. Everybody seems to have a podcast these days, and that's not an issue for me. I'm not trying to get my show on ESPN or, with Wonderly or anything like that. It's really more for my benefit, something I enjoy. And I think the other component for me as a trial lawyer and a litigator, because I edit all my own audio and I cut the show up myself, I listen to every episode and I listen to myself. So I've picked up on and fixed a lot of verbal tics, sayings, or issues with the way I might present information over the years that's been invaluable, whether it's in a courtroom, which I used to be in all the time, or a deposition, arguing before judges, which I still do via Zoom quite a bit. So for me, it's really just been an overall great compliment to being a trial lawyer. And you're right, other lawyers don't want to go near it. I really don't see any compliance issues. I'm not giving legal advice on my podcast.
Sure.
But I probably would if it was the right.
And who do you exactly look for? Is it kind of give us your
price, right?
who is your typical guest? Can you kind of go through that a bit?
It's going to be anybody who's got a great story where I can kind of cover the intersection between business and sports. So by way of example, I've had, for the football fans on here, Michael Lombardi was on my show. He spent 30 years in the NFL, worked with Bill Belichick, Al Davis, and Bill Walsh, 3 Super Bowls, 2 with the Patriots, 1 with the 49ers. And he wrote a great book called Gridiron Genius, which is really more of a management life manual through the context of football. And he was gracious enough to sit with me and share sort of his lessons through Belichick, Walsh, and Davis, and apply those to business. I've had Coach Eric Musselman, who coaches the Razorbacks, on my show at his office in Fayetteville. And again, kind of covered how his coaching techniques and the things he's teaching apply in the context of business. AJ Vaynerchuk was a guest on my show during the Super Bowl. You can't really, I told him he was the perfect intersection between business and sports. You know, bringing the agency concept, which Vayner Sports is disrupting, and into the world of sports. And I had Marshall Newhouse, former offensive lineman for the Patriots, won a Super Bowl with the Packers. Marshall's a tech investor, tech entrepreneur. He's works with the NFLPA and mentors players on investing and business. So again, that synergy, right, between business and sports. I mean, I could go on, but that's sort of what I'm looking for when I'm trying to figure out who I'd like. The individual that I'm having on Thursday is top of the game in his particular sport, but he's also not only top athletically, he's a social media brand marketing genius. And that's what I want to talk about.
Nice. We might have someone on our show that might be a good fit, I think, huh? Wonder who. We think and we got John Gillie back. Hey, John. John had a power outage.
Yeah, sorry about that.
He's back with us.
Yeah.
I guess, you know, we're going to wrap up today's episode. I just want to do one last thing, I guess. You know, tell us, you know, silver lining to COVID-19. I guess to start with you, John. You just joined back, and you might lose signal again. But what's one thing, you know, that you have benefited from and learned from you know, COVID-19?
Well, can you hear me, Jason?
Yep.
Excellent. Sorry about that. That's one more reason to pack up and move to South Florida, right?
They don't give you power anymore up there.
Yeah. So for us, we were built to be remote. We were built to be virtual. And if there was one silver lining, we were ready for it. And I think it strengthened our team. Obviously, you know, with tools like Zoom and other digital tools, it just gave us reassurance that we were built for the future.
Yes, I agree. I think we see so many industries.
I'll just leave you with that.
Yeah, we see so many industries that say, oh, tomorrow I'll do it. Tomorrow, a lot in your field, Michael, of course, right? I mean, how many attorneys don't have a CRM system? They still use file cabinets, and they're always saying, one day I'll get it, one day. And now a lot of them are out of work. They can't figure it out, you know, and it's of course, you know, a nightmare right now with their files. So Michael, I guess you jump in, you know, tell us silver lining to this whole outcome.
I actually think it's been the slowing down of things. I know that seems like opposite of what entrepreneurship is, right? Most entrepreneurs are very much go, go, go. But, you know, once you're forced to stay home, once you're forced to start utilizing Zoom and different technologies, you're kind of forced to slow it down a little. And I think that gives everybody time to be more mindful, gives everybody time to figure out what they really need to focus on. I think one of the dangers with wearing multiple hats, which it sounds like everybody on here to an extent, is that you do a lot of cool little things well, necessarily doing the best at one or two things. And so COVID, I think, at least for me, gave me the opportunity to slow it down, be more mindful. I mean, I've always worked from home generally, so I did the not rushing around to meeting after meeting, I thought was beneficial. Nice.
And James, go ahead.
Sure. I think to me, what's been beneficial is learning how to deal with disruption. What this has done really is pushed our economy 10 years ahead of schedule.
Yep.
We've been talking for many, many years, besides the pandemic was coming in our field, but the fact that we were going to have to come up with some kind of socialization where people were going to receive paychecks at home. As automation took over, there were going to be less and less jobs available, and we were going to have to retool people. And what it showed during this acceleration right now, the disruption, is that some people are just not ready to retool, and they're not going to be able to retool, and they're just not going to make it. It's unfortunate. So our government's going to have to figure out how to fund these people and how to keep them going. The disruption has also helped young people, aside from getting to the beach and get COVID on our beaches. What it's given the young people, I think, the the millennials the opportunity to do is figure out how to get their new businesses started, because you're going to see a whole lot of new businesses popping up from this disruption. Disruption just causes havoc and causes opportunity. And again, it's survival of the fittest. I'm a big believer in evolution. I'm a scientist. Some people are going to survive this, some people aren't. And, you know, we're going to have to help pick up the pieces for those who don't. But for young people, this is a great opportunity to make hay right now.
Yes, and I think it's only $125 to create an LLC in the state of Florida. You know, how much does a website cost today? How much does a CRM cost today? So I think it is a huge opportunity to create your own business, of course. And you don't need commercial real estate like you once did, right? There's no need to be where I was in New York City, you know, paying a lot of money on rent just to have an office so someone could come into. Okay, so Alyssa, take us home. You know, go ahead.
COVID, but I agree with Michael, some strategy. You know, we've had to be strategic. It's interesting. You know, there's no FOMO because you're not missing out on anything, that's for sure. So I think professionally, socially, everything, you've got more time. You know, how we spend it is interesting. But yeah, strategy. And I would also say, you know, I did a lot of traveling. You know, historically, and I always have for my business, and you know, mix between conferences and things. Some of them you like still have to do no matter how long you're in the industry, but not happening too is, you know, is interesting. And I think yes, and I'm like always used to joke like I wish I was born 20 years earlier because I struggle with technology, but it's forced me. You know, it's forced me personally, us as a company, everything, to probably do stuff that we would have been more reluctant to do.
Totally agree. I think we're seeing a lot of people that won't touch Facebook, won't touch Instagram, won't touch TikTok, and then all of a sudden they start using it and they're like, whoa, this is a lot easier than I realized. I can do this. I can use a CRM, and we're seeing a ton of that. So we're going to wrap things up. Thanks everyone for joining us on the Shrimp Tank. As always, support your small businesses, especially your local ones. You can catch the 100+ episodes up on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and up on our website, theshrimptankpodcast.com. For everyone in this chat group right now, you guys could hang in here. We could chit-chat a little bit after we exit, okay?
Thanks, Jason.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.